conscience, the instinct to judge oneself against moral principles, is more than an ability. It is an instinct. I am alone, I am free, I am my own emperor. Shyness is some secret of nature which serves to restrain the desire to indulge. It obeys the call of nature, but is always in harmony with good virtues. Those who are born great face impermanence with a smile. The reason why the sea is great is that in addition to its beauty, majesty and magnanimity, it also has a self-purifying function. The duty of philosophy is to get rid of illusions born of misunderstanding. A person cannot be judged as a slave. He can only consider himself a slave. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want, but not doing anything you want not to do. Greed is the endless desire within human beings for the outside world. Morality is first required to control oneself. The busier we are, the more strongly we feel that we are alive, and the more aware we are of the existence of our lives. There are two things that fill me with ever new and ever increasing wonder and solemnity. The more often and for longer periods of time I reflect on them, the starry sky above me and the moral law within me. Only through education can people become adults, and people are completely the result of education. The so-called religion means that all our obligations are regarded as God's commands. Men are easy to be examined, but women do not reveal their secrets. Being angry is punishing yourself for the mistakes of others. Living without a goal is like sailing without a compass. There are three things that help ease the toil of life: hope, sleep, and laughter. If you want to achieve great things, you must start when you are young. A person's shortcomings come from his era, but his virtues and greatness belong to himself. If there is no sufficient reason to refuse a child's request, he should be satisfied. If there is a reason not to agree to such a request, he should not be allowed to cheat. Once you say no, don't change. With knowledge comes foresight. With foresight comes the ability to act. Wine can make people speak cheerfully, and it can also make people express their true feelings. Wine, therefore, becomes a kind of moral quality and a thing that carries a straightforward heart. Morality is indeed not a doctrine that guides people how to make themselves happy, but a doctrine that guides people how to deserve happiness. Reason holds its own principles in one hand, and in the other hand, it uses those principles to research and experiment, and then it rushes into nature. Now that I have embarked on this path, nothing should stop me from continuing along this path. If you don't learn to be humorous and interesting, people will be too miserable. What a person says must be true, but he is not obliged to tell all the truth. Beauty is a purposeless joy. The more deliberately a person wants to obtain comfort and happiness in life, the less likely this person will be to be truly satisfied. If you try your best and still get nothing, all that is left is goodwill. Just like a sleeping gem, it emits dazzling light and has value within itself. If a person has no confidence, he won't want to get up the next day. When love needs me, I am not qualified. it leaves me. In the process of human understanding of nature, it is not things that influence people, but people who influence things. It is us who construct the real world. In the process of understanding things, people are more important than things themselves. When moral punishment is no longer effective, people resort to physical punishment, but good character cannot be cultivated through it. Self-discipline of the will is the only principle of all moral laws and the duties corresponding to them. This ability, receptivity to obtain representations through the way we are stimulated by objects, is called sensibility. There is only one thing we are certain and deeply aware of, and that is that we will eventually die. As death, it seems to be an experience gained from seeing the disappearance of other things. The moral bottom principle is inevitably a categorical imperative. The infinity of time means nothing more than that. All definite length of time are possible only through the limitation of a single fundamental time. Therefore, the original representation of time must be given without limitation. Intellectuals are people who dare to use reason in all public situations. Self-discipline, true freedom, is not doing whatever you want, but self-control. What determines whether we are rich is not what we have, but what we can do without. All our knowledge begins with the senses, then moves into the intellect, and ends with reason. If we are like animals and follow our desires to avoid pain, we are not really free because we have become slaves to our desires and impulses. We are not choosing, we are obeying. Genius is a person who creates his own laws. Although experience tells us that something is such and such, it does not tell us that it cannot be otherwise. The other shore exists, but is unknown, so there is no way to know the other shore. People are not other people's tools, but their own ends. When educating their children, parents usually just want them to adapt to the current world, even if it is a fallen world. This is a true portrayal of many Chinese parents. The continuation of offspring and survival have the meaning of animal evolution, but as a human being, it is too unhuman to pursue only this. Parents who give birth to children only to serve as slaves for slave owners are not worthy of saying that they love their children. The world we know is the world that can be known to us, not the world itself. I had to suspend knowledge to make room for faith. The highest manifestation of moral quality is that a person can restrain his words and deeds with strict requirements when he is alone in an environment without any selfish thoughts. The state of being a minor does not lie in the lack of reason, but in the lack of determination and courage to use one's own reason without the guidance of others. In other words, it is one's own responsibility to be underage. Thoughts without content are empty. Intuition without concepts is blind. The moral laws in our hearts do not need to be discussed, cannot be discussed, and do not need to be discussed. Pure reason is the most beautiful thing that man can possess, because it exists independently of man. What one mind can understand must be understood by another. The morality of an action does not depend on its consequences, but only on the intention behind the action. us how to make ourselves happy, but teaches us how to live up to our happiness. The legality of action may be produced, but the morality of character cannot be produced. Love of good and faith in eternity mean the same thing. A child protects his soul like eyelashes protect his eyes. Without the key of love, no one can enter the child's soul. I respect every independent soul. Although I don't recognize some of them, I can try to understand them as much as possible. There are two things that make me feel in awe when I think of them. One is the moral law in people's hearts, and the other is the bright starry sky above our heads. If we really can't understand it, just worship it. This is not a humbleness, but a choice. Life will always be imperfect, but persistence in love allows us to continue to grow and learn to be brave. My life is about exhausting all possibilities. True freedom is to act according to your own morals and principles rather than following the crowd. Legally speaking, if a person violates the rights of others, they are guilty. Ethically speaking, as long as a person has the idea of doing so, they are guilty. The law of happiness, having something to do, someone lovely, and something to look forward to,